Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi amma ba'du. Welcome to our Thursday evening Quranic presentation. And today we're going to be looking at chapter 25, verse 6. And our theme for a while is going to be on chapter 25, titled Al-Furqan, looking at the concept of Al-Furqan that we began with last week. And this Furqan is the idea of discernment, whereas today we may look at it as, or we title this presentation, Look Beneath the Surface. Yes. Look beneath the surface. So we began chapter 25, verse 6. We began the reading. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul. And let's look at a few grammatical points we want to, for the students. We have a lot of Arabic here, so we're really addressing first the Mali students. And we want to look at the grammar. Let's look at we're learning now how to read for ourselves and looking at reading grammatically correct. So let's look at the nouns, the grammar of the nouns. So this is qul, say. It's a verb, command, say. Anzalahu, he sent it down. Alladhi, he who, we can say who, that which, who. Ya'lamu, he knows asirra. Asirra is the mysteries, you could say, those things that are unseen, hidden things, asirra. And we put the fatha on this noun. This is a noun. We know it's a noun because it has the alif lam. And we place the fatha on it because it's related to the verb ya'lamu. He knows, and this tells you what he knows. He knows asirra, so it would be the maf'ulun bihi, or we would say the object of the verb. Fi as-samawati, this is as-samawati, because we go back, see what comes before it, a preposition, so this would be majrurun bihi, or the object of the preposition, fi. So he knows the hidden things, the unseen, the hidden things in the heavens. Where al-ardi. Al-ardi ends in a kasra because al-ardi is a follower of the word as-samawati, and we say it's a follower of sequence because this wow here, atfun, is the idea of sequence, and it's following a sequence. As-samawati wa al-ardi. Innahu, surely he, kana, he was, gafuran. Gafuran is in tanween fatha. We go back, things are coming forward. It's kana. So kana is a particle, the particle to be in the past tense. You can say he was. And it's the kind of word that if it was, it is, and it will be. This is kana. If it is, and it will be. Kana. So kana has built in it a conjugation like a verb. It'll be he. He was, he is, and he will be. And Gafuran, so he is the hidden noun of Kana. And when you have a noun of Kana, to have complete thought, you would need the predicate of Kana. So Gafuran is the predicate of Kana. Yes. And then Rahiman it comes after Gafuran, Rahiman. So now, when you have two nouns following each other, having the same ending, you see the same ending, then it's going to be, it can't be the subject predicate because we already have the noun of Kana in this phrase. In this phrase. This is the phrase. This is the complete phrase. This innahu, inna is a particle. The who is a pronoun attached, which is the noun of inna, but the predicate of inna is dropped. And I'm looking at it word for word. The predicate of inna is dropped. Then we have Kana, and he is the noun of Kana. Gafuran is the predicate. Then we have another noun following Gafuran, Rahiman. This cannot be subject predicate. That's one of the ways two nouns follow each other, subject predicate, because we already have the noun of Kana in the phrase. You won't have a noun of Kana and then have a subject also. It can't be the possessive case because the first term of the possessive case cannot take tanween. It can be a follower, and there's one of two followers most likely. It can be the adjective. If it's the adjective, you say this word first and then this word. Or it can be the substitute. If it's a substitute, you will say this word first and then this word. And at this juncture of the student's learning, which one makes sense to you? This is normally translated as forgiving. This one is translated as merciful. So surely he was forgiving, merciful. He was merciful, forgiving. Which one makes sense? Which one makes the sense? That's the one you would choose, and then your logic follows that. Yes. And this is one of the words we're going to look up in Arabic, Gafuran. Yes. So this is the verse we're going to reflect on, verse 25:6, and maybe one or two subsequent verses that come afterwards. Take a look at 25:6, the students, and look at the verses that come after 25:6. And some of that we may mention in our comment. So the first word we want to look up, the first key word using Ragib, is the word enzala, kul enzala. And I want you to keep in mind, I've mentioned before, but I'm not going to take the time to point everything out now. The idea of Quran bil Quran, how the Quran defines itself. As we go throughout the presentation, of course, it's on recording. You can go back and listen to it and pick up a lot of pointers in what we're going to be saying today. So nazala, the idea we have of the word is he sent it down. So an-nuzulu is the internal noun that we're going to get the meaning from. An-nuzulu fi al-asli. An-nuzulu in its origin, in its original meaning, in its root meaning, huwa inhitatun min uluwi, min uluwin. We would say uluwin. And nuzulu, we won't translate this word because this is the word we're looking at from the dictionary. So nuzulu fi al-asli, in its root meaning, huwa, it is, in hitatun, is a declining, min uluwin, from a high place, from something higher or high. And he says, and zalahu bimatnin, and he declines from a high place by meaning. Now we're going to be, because we're going to be looking at Ibn Arabi, we're going to be quite philosophical in our presentation. So some things we're going to use the saying, sometimes you have to catch the bird while it's flying, without me giving you everything. I give you 1/4, you'll be able to get the other 3/4 on your own. So it's declining. It's declining, and think about this one idea of declining. Something's coming down, and it's coming down by meaning. Where inzalu Allah, the inzal of Allah, Ta'ala, the Most High, we will say in terms of ni'amahu, his blessings, where niqamahu, and his wrath, both we say is the coming down in terms of meaning. His blessing and his wrath, Allah, upon al-khalaqi, upon the creation, yes, or upon the creature, or the creation. Yes, it's a very broad word. We have to look at it one day. Khalaq. So the importance of this word, we're talking about something's coming down in our presentation today. Maybe we will refer back to it, these meanings. And for Ghafuran, the term Ghafuran, we look at the root letters for the dictionary, Ghafara. Now, in a dictionary, you have root letters to the form of the word, and then you have root meanings. So the internal noun, el-ghafru, is where the root meaning comes from. Like we have here, fil asli, the root meaning. And the root meaning of el-ghafru, ilbasu ma yasunuhu an ad-dansi. So it is, so el-ghafru is, we can say, the clothing of what? And this is going to tell you what the what is for the students. The clothing of whatever. And whatever is yasunuhu, what preserves or protects it from al-dansi, from, we could say, from filth or dirt. So it's clothing. The clothing of what protects it from dirt. Wal gufranu, another internal noun. Wal magfiratu, all of them coming from gafara. We will not translate it. Let him tell us what it is. Let him tell us what al-ghafru is. Al-ghafru is the clothing of what protects it. The clothing of whatever protects it from filth or dirt. So gufranu wal magfiratu min Allahi, from Allah, huwa an yasuna, it is that which protects al-abda, the servant, menan, from that which yamatsuhu al-adabu, from which punishment touches him. So this is the idea of Gafara. The idea of the word, we say, is forgiving. Forgiving. But you can see how we get it from the root meaning is to clothe that which protects you from filth or dirt, what have you. And when it's from Allah, it is that which protects the servant from punishment touching him. Yes. This is the idea. Now, let's keep these ideas in mind as we take a look now at Ibn Arabi. And what we're doing now, a project that I'm working on, as well as teaching the students, reading Quranic Arabic and comprehending and understanding what it's saying. We're taking a more philosophical look at the verses. And the project that I'm working on is comparing or the contrast between the mind of Ibn Arabi and Imam W.D. Muhammad. This is the project that I'm working on. In terms of their logic, we could say. So we take the part of the verse, Kul anzalahu alladhi ya'lamu al-ghaiba. So say, he sends it down, which or who knows al-ghaiba. He knows the unseen, al-mukhfa. The hidden. He knows the hidden, the unseen. The unseen, the hidden. They're both similar. And from al-mahjubin, from those who are veiled. The term we're going to use for this is veiled. They have a covering, or they're veiled. They're veiled from something, a mask. They're veiled or masked. The thing is masked. Yes. Fi al-alamin. And this word alamin, we know Imam W. Muhammad has translated as, from al-Fatiha, systems of knowledge. But al-alamin, there are two things that we have here. We have the one who knows, al-ghaiba, and al-ghaiba are those things which are unseen. To the one who is mahjub, to the one who is veiled. Yes. So, there are two things that we have when we look at the whole creation. We have Allah, the one who knows the al-ghaiba. The one who knows al-ghaiba. And we have Allah and we have Alameen. Yes. There's Allah and everything else is Alameen. Yes. Let me say it again. There's Allah and everything else falls in the category of Alameen. And everything that falls in the category of Alameen, and I'm getting to the translation of Imam W.D. Muhammad, is a body, contains in it a body of knowledge, which is hidden in the thing. And the body of knowledge that everything that exists in everything is part of a system or systems of knowledge. Nothing exists independently on its own outside of Alameen except for Allah. Everything else exists within Alameen, and it exists as a body of knowledge belonging to a system, a greater system of knowledge. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Yes. And we're going to see as we're talking, and some of this may repeat itself, those things that are hidden inside, within the Al-Alameen, we could say is the veil. Thus, we could say that in some sense that there are many levels and many kinds of veils, because there are many knowledges and systems of knowledges, but they are veiled from mahjubin, from those who have been veiled. Only Allah knows al-ghaib. Yes, He knows al-ghaib. We will see as we go. We'll put together as we go. So he says, Innahu kana ghafuran. So he's going to comment on this part of the verse. So he said, Yasturu. Yasturu is another word. Now, we're talking about Ghafuran now. So we saw the meaning of Ghafuran. Ghafuran is ilbas, is to close that which protects and preserves. So this idea, we would say, Yasturu, he's saying, is Yasturu. So you are covering, or you are, in a sense, clothing, etc., placing something over the sifati and nufusi, the qualities or the attributes of the self, the attributes of the self, it's in the plural, that has perhaps, I'm going to say, perhaps have influenced the self in some term or another. Yes. The attributes of the self. Yes. To protect and preserve from the wrath of punishment. El-Hajibati lil-Guyubi. The veil, the one who is, we're going to say, and this is one of the terms that Ibn Arabi used, the veil keepers, the keepers of the veil. I'm going to explain this concept that I am getting from it. Al-Hajiba. Lil-Guyub. There are those things that will be considered al-hajiba. And it's al-hajiba. You have Allah and you have al-alameen. Within al-alameen itself is a veil. And Allah is the thing that is real. As the Quran says, Allah is the reality. Allah is the true reality. And the Alameen veils us from seeing or knowing Allah completely. We can't see Allah. We can't know Allah. But we can come to knowing or seeing or sensing His face through the veil. And even though Al-Alameen is a veil, His face, we could say, is within the veil. It's a veil but his face is in the veil, and we seek to know his face. And the knowledge that's hidden within the El-Alameen is, we could say, a way to knowing his face. Yes. So we have to look beneath the surface of the veil. That is the hope, the challenge. Yes. So he knows El-Gaiba, but El-Gaiba is veiled by Alameen. I'm repeating myself. So to do so, the Sifat Nufus, we have to, and in terms of forgiving, he's forgiving. Now, I know I'm not speaking like you may want to hear when I'm saying forgiving, but he's going to, this forgiveness comes down, and it's going to cover the faults, we could say, of the self. That the keepers of the veil, that El-Hajibati Lil-Guyub, for the unseen. Now, let me explain this idea, because it's very philosophical, and I can't get too much into too particular with El-Guyub, because it would take a lot of time. So, for example, now, so Allah is the unseen, Al-Gaiba. So we could say Jibreel is a Hajiba. Jibreel is a keeper of the veil, but Jibreel is veiled himself. He's a veil himself. And he being a Hajiba to the unseen. He's the veil to the unseen, and we could say, just for the purpose of discussion, he's the closest thing to the unseen in the steps I'm going to give. But he reveals to Muhammad the Prophet, the prayer and peace be upon him. And Muhammad the Prophet, in a sense, becomes a Hajiba, Lil-Guyub, but he's also a veil himself. He has knowledge of the veil, but he himself is a veil. He's somewhat of Mahjub, but he himself is a keeper of the veil to the unseen. Yes. And the only way that you can get to the El-Ghaib, is to lift or remove the veil. So we have to see Muhammad the Prophet. I'm gonna use this idea here. The Mahjub, you see him as the veil, but to get to the unseen, we have to look beneath the surface of the prophet or the prophets, because they themselves represent a kind of veil to the unseen. If we take them face value, then we remain in a state of Mahjub more so than if we look beyond Muhammad the Prophet. Let me digress for one moment, because I'm teaching. I'm teaching from what we have here, not a pre-made speech. So the makers of the idols, the idol makers, and you find this in society, the idol makers, they present idols to the people in various forms, material forms. Now, when questioned in Scripture, they say, no, these are not God. It's not God. The veil is not God. The El-Alameen is not God. The idol is not God, but to say it's a way to God. So the El-Alamin is not God, though the face is contained in the Alamin, it's not God. So Prophet Muhammad, the praise and peace be upon him, he's a veil to the unseen, but he's not God, but he's a way to God because he's a keeper of the veil, and though he's also a veil himself. I hope I'm trying to make sense of it. And the only way to see beyond, to see Muhammad the Prophet, and beyond Muhammad, the surface of Muhammad the Prophet, let's say, beyond the surface of the veil, is that you have to remove yourself. You have to remove yourself, cleanse yourself, remove yourself. Therefore, you have to be forgiven from all of the faults and falsehoods that prevent you from going beyond the veil to that which is unseen. Yes, many levels of this. And you do so bi-anwari as-sifatihi, by the divine lights of his attributes. Yes, because knowing, seeing his face, coming in the presence of his face requires that you have knowledge of his attributes. These have been given to Muhammad the Prophet, as we mentioned in the last presentation, have been given to him in terms of his name, these qualities. And though we have these similar qualities in our human existence, but yet when we talk about the El-Ghaib, the Safati is pointing to the El-Ghaib. So we have to come, and it's not the highest form of knowledge, it's knowing him by his attributes. That goes beyond the surface of the veil. Yes. And this is given in the form of Ghafura. Yes, Ghafuran. Yes. So that's a lot said there. Maybe confusing, but sometimes when you're talking philosophically, it gets that way. And Rahiman, he's saying, is Yafidu el-Kamalati. And Nafidu is the over, we could say, Yafidu, yes. The overflowing, inundating, the overflowing perfections. Overflowing perfections. You see the connection with Ghafuran is we have Anzalat. Anzalat comes down, but Ghafuran also. The Anzalat comes down in the form of a veil. Yes. Let me take a step back. I want to mention. Well, no, we're going. Maybe I'll get back to it. No, let me go back. Let me go back here. Al-Hajiba. This concept is understood. So now, we say Muhammad the Prophet is a Hajiba. Innocent. We say Jibril is a Hajiba. What he gives to Muhammad the Prophet is the Ha, and Muhammad the Prophet becomes Al-Hajiba. And then Muhammad the Prophet, see, when we're talking about the ascension and knowledge, to knowing the unseen El-Ghaib, to come as close as we can, we come as close as we can with Sifatihi, knowing his Sifatihi beneath the surface of what we say, in terms of the attributes, his attributes. Now, if Muhammad the Prophet is a veil, and he's the keeper of the veil, the closer we can get to Muhammad the Prophet, the closer we get to El-Ghuyub. The further distance we're from Muhammad the Prophet in knowledge of him, that we see beyond the knowledge of him, because he represents the body of knowledge, then the closer we get to El-Ghuyub. So Muhammad the Prophet, he is given from high place now. Jibreel, Muhammad the Prophet, the soul of Muhammad the Prophet, coming from a high place of ascension to what we're talking about the unseen. There are levels of the unseen. Then it's put in a language, and that language is Quran. Now the Quran, it becomes a veil. In that Allah says, we speak to man from behind a veil, or we send a messenger. So it itself is a veil, because we have these levels of the veiling of the unseen, because the unseen cannot be spoken directly. The unseen you can't see directly. The unseen really cannot be put in a language that would disclose Allah or the unseen directly. Therefore, the language itself becomes a veil. And we spoke about that last week. And to make it easy and clear, the language is put in metaphors and speech. Things that we can see that are manifested, we use that to point to something higher. So when we talk about metaphors, the metaphor is veiling a true reality, the real. And the only real, the highest of the real, till we get to the only real as we go through these veil stages, is Allah. So the Quran itself becomes a veil. And Muhammad the Prophet has been chosen to be a keeper of the veil. Jibreel is chosen to become a keeper of the veil that he gives to Muhammad the Prophet to be entrusted as a keeper of the veil. And Muhammad the Prophet becoming a veil himself. So the closer we can get to Muhammad the Prophet, the closer we can get to the veil to see through, to have a peek at that goes beyond him. That's why many who were in search of hadiths, they want to get as close as they can to a report on him that they're not going through many chains. And many of them wanted to get a report directly from his wife, who is very close to him, that will put them closer to him. And many of the companions, and many of the first generations, the Salafi. See, the closer we get to Muhammad the Prophet in authenticity, then the closer we get to the keeper of the veil on that level, Muhammad the Prophet himself. And the closest we can get to him today is by reading Quran. Now, the Quran being a veil, then, and that's the closest that we can get, even closer than the Hadith to El-Ghuyub. Then we want to get as close as we can to the knowledge that's contained in the Quran, in order that we can see beyond the veil of the Quran to that which is hidden. And there's much hidden. When we talk about systems of knowledge, Al-Alameen, we have Allah and we have Al-Alameen. And Alameen are systems of knowledge. Everything that he has created has within it vast knowledges. Within everything, every small thing has in it vast knowledge. And that knowledge helps see beyond the thing itself. So the Quran, the closer we get to the Quran and comprehending and understanding the knowledge that's contained in the Quran, the closer we get to Al-Ghaib. So, if we read translations, that puts us a step further, and that thickens the veil, mahjub. if you disbelieve in the Quran and don't accept the Quran, it thickens the veil. Yes. Until you in a state of not even being knowledgeable, a state of dumbness. Because the soul has been incarcerated by falsehood. And you want to cover that falsehood with the divine light of his attributes in the form of forgiveness. Yes. So now the student, the servant, he doesn't want to go to the Al-Hajiba. He wants to get as close as he can. And the Quran is a form of Al-Hajiba. It's a keeper of the veil. And we want to get as close as we can because the Quran is not Allah. No, it's not Allah, but within the veil, the Quran being the veil, within the Quran is his face. Yes, but his face has been masked in language because we can't speak of the unseen directly. So if we depend upon translation, then that puts us a step further away from Al-Hajiba. We want to get as close as we can. Yes, it's not Allah, but it's a way to Allah. And how do we get close? We get closer by the body of knowledge that's contained in the Quran as it points to the true reality. And when we come in contact with the true reality, we come closer and closer to being in the presence of El-Gaib. Yes. I may be going in circles as I'm talking, but have to kind of wrestle with this to try to get it clear. But I'm sure you understand. So that's why we want to learn to read the Quran in Arabic. Then, as we read in Arabic, what is it saying? What does it mean? So forth and so on. So we're using commentaries. Others who have studied Quran. So then we go back and look at it out for ourselves. All the time seeking forgiveness. Yes. Okay. So Rahim now is this coming down Anzalat. Rahim, we have the idea of mercy. And it's the overflowing, it's overflowing, he overflows the perfections upon the hearts. Yes. We talked about the perfections in the last presentation. Some of these presentations, we start with 25. You may have to go back and read without me repeating everything I said before. These are the perfections upon the hearts. During, with or during Safa'iyah, it's purification. Yes, we want it purified. Our hearts have to be purified. If we're going to, in our quest, I'm going to say, in our quest, and what we're talking about. So it says, bihasbi, according to istidadati. Istidadati, according to what the preparedness. See, and this is also a word. Some of these we may take more time with. Today, we're taking more time with the idea of the veil. We'll take more time with this idea of preparedness, meaning that we purify the heart. We purify the heart. We spoke about how the soul becomes falls in love with the divine lights and give birth to the heart in the sciences. The purification. The heart has to be purified. The soul, we want the soul to be purified. Yes. And then it has been prepared for a certain capacity. So we can't you may not be prepared to take in the whole Alameen, but how much you are prepared for in terms of your perfection of an attribute, perfecting an attribute of the soul. So the heart is only Allah will give you only what He has prepared for you to have. Because in the Quran, He says that no burden will He place on any soul. So Allah is not going to place a burden on you more than you have been prepared to accept. Yes. And how much you are able to accept to see beyond the surface of things, the veiling of things, of the true reality. One man gufranihi, and from his gufranihi, we're going to say forgiving, and from his clothing, his clothing of that which preserves and protects from his wrath, and the overflowing perfections is this inzal. So this mercy comes down, this gufran, it comes down. It's this inzal. It's contained in this inzal. And we say the Quran comes down. This, you could see, if we could think of the curtain. Yes, a curtain is like a veil. So you have Allah and you have Al-Alameen. So you have Allah and then the curtain drops. The curtain comes down. And the true play that's carried out is carried out on the other side of the curtain. Yes. And what we desire, what we request, is the removal of the curtain. But we can't remove the curtain because, as He said to Moses, you can't see me directly. You can't see this play directly. So the curtain has come down in the form of Alameen. And Ladhi, which tasakuna, you doubt. You doubt in it. Many doubt. Let's look at what we're saying without thinking of it so high. Many doubt metaphorical speech. They take the material world, the manifested world, to be the true reality. It's only reality in its manifested form. But it's not the true reality. It's pointing to a higher and even greater true reality, universal reality. And many of us get caught up in the material world, not knowing it's just the veil. The curtain comes down and it's decorated, and you get so caught up in the decorations of the curtain, you don't know that there's a play that's going on beyond the curtain. You doubt it. You don't believe it. And those are the ones, mahjubuna, who is taken by the veil. Yes, far, far from al-hajiba, from the veil keepers. Don't even believe in the veil keepers. Yes. You doubt. You doubt about what we're saying. Dalakadabu, instead, you reject and lie. Yes. And I mentioned last week, we're in a society that rejects and lies all the time, full of lies, full of deception. Yes. That you don't know the mask, the veiling. See, the woman, she wears the veil over the face. She's veiling the face. Allah is veiling His face. The mask. He put on a mask. The woman may not put on a cloth veil. She may put on a mask. Yes. and you are so attracted to the mask, you may forget that there's a woman behind the mask. She may have to remind you, that's not really me. The veil is not really me. The makeup is not really me. But you have taken the makeup to be the real me. And you don't see me as I am. Yes. And the servant, he wants to see Allah as he is, in the purifications of his heart. Not that he will see him directly, but he will see his face through the veil. Yes. This type of language, if you're not prepared for it, it's the deity. If you're not prepared for it, it will sound like shirk to you. But it's very difficult because we cannot express the al-ghaib without using what's seen. And this is why many reject people like Ibn Arabi, people like Imam W. Muhammad and others because of the language that they use. But you should see the conceptual idea of what I'm giving. If you're prepared for it. If you're not prepared for it and being confused by it, leave it alone. Maybe you'll be ready later on for it. Ayyuhat al-mahjubun. Oh, veiled beings. Yes. So veiled or kanzabu that you're left in darkness. Yes. You don't get a glimpse of light. So they reject, they lie. Bil Qiyamati al-Kubra, in the great, by the great standing, the great resurrection. Yes. Or the great unveiling. They reject it. وَذَلِكَ التَّكْذِيبُ, and this rejection and lying and rejecting, إِنَّمَا يَكُونُ لَفَرْتَ الْإِحْتِجَابِ. Surely it will be لَفَرْتَ. It will be excessive, placing excessiveness, thickening, and thickening al-ihtijab, thickening the covering, the veiling, the mask. Yes. As one great, I'm going to refer to him as philosopher has said, speaking of the mask, that we're going to reflect on him, but put it in this sense, we're going to have a play ourselves. The true curtain, but we still, sometimes you have the stage, there's a curtain, there's something going on behind the curtain, and then there's a play in front of the curtain. And we're going to put on the play. And we're going to take this bite of knowledge we're talking about here and present it in a play in the form of a ritual or a play. So we have the mask there laying on the floor. So we pick the mask up. One person picks up the mask and puts the mask on. He's taking what we're saying here and going to make a play out of it. He put on the mask, and it's just a mask. It's a man with a mask on. And he starts the dance of the ritual. And in the dance, the onlookers get caught up in the mask. That after a while, they do not realize that there's a man with the mask on, and they take the mask to be God for real. Yes. Idolatry, theatrics. How many people go to the movie and you buy a ticket and they show you these are actors and they're acting out a character, a sifat. Yes, a sifat of the soul. But they have to remove them themselves. So they have to remove the sifat of themselves, the character of their own personal self, in order to take on the character of the person that they have created in the play. And we know this going in. We know Will Smith is not Muhammad Ali. We know Muhammad Ali, we know Will Smith. But Will Smith is going to put on the mask of Muhammad Ali. We still know that's Will Smith. But after a while, in the play, in the theatrics, in the drama, Will Smith becomes Muhammad Ali. And it's very difficult to tell the onlookers that that's not Muhammad Ali, that's Will Smith. This is what happened on a much grander, if that's the right word, grander, stage, that he puts on the mask, and he's calling it the mask of God. He's putting on the Alameen. He's calling it the mask of God. He's putting on Jibril. He's calling it the mask of God, so forth and so on. Because beyond the mask is El Gaib. He puts it on in the play, and after a while, the people began to think in the ritual, in the dance, that the mask is God. And at that point, the person with the mask can do anything to the people. He can start killing people, and they won't think it's a man killing people. They will think it's God killing the people. How many people do we see put on the mask? Not that they become the keeper of the veil, they become God himself. And that's how the people began to see him. Not a way to God, but God. Yes. So it thickens. It thickens. The takzeeb, the lie and rejection thickens. It becomes over excessiveness of the mask. Our Naksani al-Istidadi, or it diminishes. It either thickens the veil or it diminishes the preparedness. You become less and less prepared for the true reality. But Kalahuma, and both of them, and a ta'zeebu, the punishment, ta'zeeb, and ta'zeebu becomes imperative. The punishment becomes imperative by the punishment for appropriating, for the appropriation of the fire of an-nirani at-tabiyati al-jasmaniyati, the bodily nature, the fires of the bodily nature. Yes, the appropriation. And that, we could say, the fires of our own passions and desires. Yes, becomes the punishment. Yes, and we'll give an example as we go through. And, or, el-hayati, el-hayulaniyati, el-hayulaniyati, the materialistic forms. Yes. Both becoming an oppression and an influence on the soul because of your rejection and lying and rejection. That the true reality even exists, or universal realities exist beyond your own bodily nature or the materialistic forms that have been placed upon the souls, the darkened souls. Yes, leaves you in a state of darkness. That you begin to put things in their wrong place. Adlul-Maniya, Al-Dhulmaniya. Yes, the darkened souls. This is Ibn Arabi. I hope I didn't confuse you, but this is how we're going to be talking for a while. So now, consider what has been said, and you may have to go back and look at it. I think there should be discernment. Looking at Imam W.D. Muhammad now, and one of the lies that we have entertained, one of the masks, one of the veils that have been so thickened by the American people is the mask or the veil of racism on the soul that has incarcerated the soul of the American people. And those who have promoted the racism and those who have become victims of racism. Yes. So here comes Imam W.D. Muhammad. Imam W.D. Muhammad, I'm going to say now, also becomes an El-Hajiba, a keeper of the veil, that creates a language that has removed the lies, the falsehoods, the rejection that leads to the unseen. Yes. And now I'm being particular in the example of racism. We'll see when you read it. Yes. He comes. See, it has once the soul becomes so thickened and incarcerated by the falsehoods, if we go back to last week, what have you, then it becomes a great burden on the soul. And if we look today in America, we see racism, time and time, examples of how it's such a burden on the soul, especially on the soul that have been victimized by racism. But yet, because they disbelieve in the keeper of the veil, they disbelieve in the veil itself, the veiling itself. They disbelieve that there's a higher universal reality beyond that of racism, racial connotations that has been placed on the soul. They stay in the fires. They stay in the fires of their own bodily, that has become their bodily nature. Yes. And many, like the prophets, when they came to the people, many of the people that they came to rejected them. So Imam W.D. Muhammad comes to the American people, in particular coming to those who are more victimized by the whole country is victimized by racism, but the one who was victimized the most, the greatest, the veil was thickened the most, have rejected him and have stooped back into the world of racism. Can't find a way out. And has given a language, though the language is veiled, has given a language that would lift the veil of racism on the American public. You're going to have to come back and look at W.D. Muhammad in America. Yes. For example, language. Let's remove the language that's used as racist language to identify ourselves. Let's go to the root of racism. Let's go to the root of it in America. And let's start with those who have been victimized the greatest by racism, which is nothing but which is really nefertatu. It's an excessive veiling of the heart, of the soul, preventing the human being from coming in contact with truth and reality. So he says, number one, remove the mask. Take away the mask that has been portrayed as God in the form of the one who enslaved and dominated the African American. That he would look at that over a period of 400 years. You're going to look at this picture of a Caucasian man who has dominated and enslaved you for 400 years, and you can't see beyond that picture, that you have taken the picture to be God itself, only thickens the veil of racism. So look how quietly he got the churches to remove the images. Yes, and many have removed the image because it has an influence on the human psyche. With what seems to be common, simple speech, but no, look at it. What would happen? What would happen if you go and dominate a Caucasian race of people and then erect an African-looking image and say that this is God after dominant? What would happen to the minds of those children? What would happen to the minds of those people over a period of time? Yes. So he said, let's not use terminology like black and white to identify people. Let's use terms like African American or Bolivian. We want to get away from the racist language because the racist language is doing nothing but keeping a mask on. And you are taking the mask to be for real. Let's take the mask off and see it's just the man behind that mask portraying himself as God. No. We sitting in a movie house for so long, you cannot tell me Will Smith is not Muhammad Ali. He's more Muhammad Ali than Muhammad Ali is himself. Yes. So look at what he's saying. Now, this is the logic. Look at the logic of Imam W.D. Muhammad as he's expressing with language here, with contrast and similarity with the language of Ibn Arabi, who comes years ahead, years before. He said, they are being, these races, on the black side and the white side, the brown side and the red side, they are being humanized by unseen forces in the Alameen that has been veiled. What are the unseen forces? Truth is an unseen force. Truth and reality, the true reality, is an unseen force in the head and in the heart. Truth. And to get to this truth, to understand this truth, in order for this truth to be manifested, the heart has to be purified. Purified of racism. Yes. He came and championed. He came and championed the war against racism very quietly. And we have ignored him. America has ignored it and still find themselves in the web of racism. Even African Americans went back to it. As soon as he died, went back to it. We did not accept him. Yes, we're cheerleaders and all, but we didn't accept the logic. So he's saying this about the American people. They are being formed by truth. They are being formed by the pressure. Let me get my pen so it can follow. They're being formed by the pressure on their life and their intelligence and their human nature. Human sentiments to respect truth and justice. Now, can't you see Godfather in this? Can't you see Rahim in this? Can't you see mercy and forgiveness? Can't you see the coming down of forgiveness and mercy on the American public through the keeper of the veil. These unseen, invisible qualities, sifat. This is the word for sifat, invisible qualities. To the human eye, to the visible eye, this is Elegai he's talking about, that have been working in man to reform him or them, transform him, and give him the beautiful human life again that God created for him. Isn't this Gafur? Isn't this Rahim? Isn't this Gafur and Rahim to realize the invisible, the truth and reality that's invisible to the naked eye? It's covered by the veil and thickened by racism. The veil thickened by racism. Yes. And all of this brings us to our theme. Is necessary. For the Quran, discernment is necessary for it all. We're still talking about for the Quran. The book and for the Quran. You're given the book and the discernment. The discerning intellect. Yes. Or else you're going to be left in darkness. That's enough for today. I thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.